Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Camera Tuesday, we're going to talk about Canon R6 Mark II. So let's dive right into it. Now this puppy is basically Mark II of that, and here's the deal. Mark 1 was actually good for the price to performance ratio, but it was really good, but it had way too many Canon cripple hammer basically. So it was like, I can do this, but only for this long. I can do this, but with this limitation. So basically it was a super horsepower, high power vehicle with very poor tires. So basically it had zero traction. So they listened to the community feedback and they have finally unleashed the Phoenix. So now it has 24 megapixel and it has dual UHS 2 card slots, meaning you can actually use this for professional works. And again, you can use even single card, but generally not recommended. And trust me, there is a reason why people do not want to use that. The day you will find out would be a very expensive day. So just go with dual card slots. It is 2.44 lakhs in India, and that translates to around 2500 US dollar. So price is exactly the same as the Mark 1 iteration. And this time we have reached a point in photography world where photography is sorted. Like, we got this. Like, yeah, you can have a bit more megapixel, you can have a bit more raw and this and that, but it's like it's sorted. So the new avenue where people are competing, like back in the old days, the first time digital came to be, it was like ISO. Every Tom, Dick and I was like ISO, man, ISO. Then over time it will become as like, dynamic range, man, dynamic range. Then it became like a bit depth. Now it's like we have everything. So right now they are competing on autofocus, man. Like our autofocus is even better. Be mindful, autofocus at this point in time is GG. It's good, sorted. Like if you are having issue that you may have a defective equipment, maybe an edge case, or 99% of the chance you are the problem. So you have to know autofocus is really good, and throughout the brand, Sony and Canon, both of them have really good autofocus in mirrorless. So what they are Canon is touting this time is like how Sony autofocus is there, where it's like you have to tell it, or you are focusing on cars, so it's like I got this. It rearranges itself and fine tunes for vehicle photography, and it works amazingly well. Canon is like, I'm gonna do you one better. Shoot will figure out what to use, meaning it will figure out, hey, it's a bird, I will use the bird algorithm. It's a car, I will use a car algorithm. So that's the whole thing, and it will improve while doing so because it has deep learning based AI. Now everything has that nowadays. And on top of that, the primary reason why this is like directly taking a homing missile to Sony is like 6K, downsample to 4K. That's awesome. 4K. That's awesome. 60 FPS, no crop. Let that sink in. Nope crop. Nope. It's not like, now everybody who understands a processor understands the Sony intentionally crippled basically A7 Mark IV simply because they were like, hey, if A7 Mark IV can actually do full frame 60 FPS, why would anybody buy a A7 S3? And I'm like, that can do 120 FPS. And again, that's why S series supposed to have a global shutter. It does not have global shutter, so it's like they're crippling it. Again, same processor on a higher resolution body with a higher bit rate, it somehow can do it, all of that. And now in like, oh no, it can't read the sensor. No, it can read it. You're just crippling it. Canon is like, I see you, I see what you're doing, I'm not gonna cripple it. So full frame 4K 60 fps, and it does matter for the lens You buy a lens and it magically changes in Sony, especially if you are in ultra wide range. What the heck you gonna do? You already at, let's say, 16 full frame lens, now it crops into APS-C. Where the hell are you gonna get a lens that is more than 16 So that's a tangible issue with Sony's, and Sony's answer is like, buy A7 S3. Now Canon is like, buy ours. So it's a really good system. So what have been improved here? Well, little bit of improvement in mechanical shutter. It goes to 12 FPS. Now, why do we need mechanical shutter? You have to understand, this is not a stacked sensor nor a global shutter sensor. Global shutter, the day we go into global shutter, we will no longer have to worry about mechanical shutter. Until that day happens, we have to worry about mechanical shutter because even a stacked sensor does have some latency. Not zero, and like not a lot, but it has some that. And this one, because it's not a stacked sensor, it does have issues, meaning if you're taking photographs of anything that is fast moving and thin and long, basically it's going to show up like a golf poles, electric poles and all that, you will notice that it has rolling shutter. So in those sort of scenario, you have to use mechanical shutter. 12 fps, not bad, not terrible. And then you can go to electric shutter and then boost up to 40 fps. Now that's fast, and 40 fps not with JPEG, for RAW. That's really good. That's another thing that they are directly aiming for, Sony. Whereas like Sony's like, we have 10 fps. Not really, because the moment you go to RAW, it drops down to 5, and even in electronic, it drops down to that point. So here's like electronic allows us to go even further. So tangibly better. So if you're in a scenario where it's like, dude, I need burst performance, shut up and buy this. It has pre-recording, meaning if you set it up properly, and let's say you are want to make a video of a bird but only a clip of it, you're gonna go in there, aim for it, pre-record, start pre-recording, means you half press the shutter, it starts to pre-record. It can be set for 3 seconds or 5 seconds. Let's say you set it for 3 seconds. The moment bird flies, then you presses the whole button. That will of course will cause some lag, and you will miss the moment your bird starts to fly, it does some pre-action. You will never capture that pre-action, but if you had pre-recording, the pre-action was already captured. You don't have the same. It will be really helpful for sports. Rather than just recording the whole thing, you can be like, only when, let's say, batsman is hitting the ball, you're like, okay, I'll wait for it. It's pre-recording it, so you hit. So anything interesting happening, you want to capture it. Pre-shooting, same thing with basically burst mode, but that time FPS will go down to 30, and be mindful, those things will consume battery like there is no tomorrow, and it's up to you to use them wisely. Don't just go YOLO on it, use them wisely. Focus breathing compensation, literally control C, control V from Sony. That's a really good thing, and that's why we want competition. Without competition, this would have never happened. So majority of the lenses that we are using in still photography do not have power focus capability, meaning they shift physically, they shift the framing size, basically frame up and down. This changes when you're changing the not mm, as in like focus distance, the near focus and far focus. This will physically change. It's very jarring for video, and no professional videographer will ever allow that. However, what the hell are you gonna do? Like, you can buy cine lenses, those are expensive. What if you want to do that with a proper lens, like photography lenses? Focus breathing compensation, all it does is figures out what is the breathing room, crops in, and voila. Now it does compromise a little bit, but be mindful, given the fact that you are downsampling from 6K, you have plenty of room where you are still downsampling and you do not have to worry too much about it. So it's a really good thing. Sony introduced it in A7 Mark IV. They're like, I got you, good good technology, let's implement that. I'm happy with that. Finally, no 30-minute recording limit, finally. Like, to give you that context of like why this is so important to me, is like, there was a law in European Union where they're like, dude, if you record more than 30 minutes, it's a video camera. Video camera had a different tax bracket compared to stills camera. Stills camera were lower tax bracket. So every company was like 29, 59. And only some companies were like, for example, Panasonic, in some of their models, they're like, okay, we'll just pay the higher tax. And that's why, like, let's say GH5 was not that cheap. It should have been cheap. It's have micro four third sensor, but it was not cheap still because they were paying the higher taxes. But benefit to our recording. That law had been reformed 2 years ago. Like, literally. And the moment that law was reformed, Sony literally started to remove 30-minute limit from everything. Like, they removed it from as cheap camera as A6100. They're like, there is no reason for this limit. They will not have. Of course, your camera can still overheat, but that's up to you. There will no longer be arbitrary 30-minute limit. And many people complain that I talk too fast. 30-minute limit. Mine is Canon 800D. Now be mindful, that is back in the day. I bought it years ago. That time there was no dream of like, we're gonna have a beyond 30-minute recording. But nowadays, that has been there for 2 years. Almost all camera companies have been removed, unless they are Canon. Canon did remove it on high end. This is the first time there's like medium range kind of system. Okay, we're gonna remove it. Heck, I would have bought Canon RP directly if it did not had a 30-minute recording limit. This has 10-bit video. Exactly like Sony system, and full HD goes up to a bit higher than Sony. Sony goes to 120 FPS. This puppy goes to 180. Like, literally somebody control C, control V Sony's spec kit, and they just boosted everything. So it's there, and it can do 6K 60 FPS raw output, as in 10-bit output from HDMI, meaning you can get a full-fledged 6K with every function, with autofocus, and don't have to worry about it, including all eye recording. That would be very important. It also has a false color system, which again, Sony introduced it. They're like, hey, that's a good option. How about we give it to you? So it's a really, really good system. Improvement has been drastic. Now be mindful, performance improvements is not that drastic compared to the Mark 1 to Mark 2. However, ease of use, usability booster is like completely different. Like, if you had issues with those cameras, this camera is like, I got you, fam. If you did not have the issue with that camera, like Mark 1, you will not notice too much into this one. But it does have a lot of subtle things that makes your life much easier and tangibly much better than Sony system. So what about the performance? Well, it has far better focus bracketing option, which is another software based thing. Again, camera can do it. It's just companies are like, no, this is a feature we should only limit for, let's say, A1 or things of that nature. Canon is like, hey, we are not doing so well in market terms. And again, they are the biggest market shareholder at this point in time, as in like how many units sold, but their share is dropping. And Canon noticed it. So this, I'm pretty sure that's the reason why they are, and I already made a video like 2 weeks ago where I talked about that. Their market sales is not going up, it's going down. So They are unlocking far more oomfish feature, which is just a software lock. They're like, hey, let's not lock it, let's just give the performance. So focus bracketing options are there, which are like depth composite is also there, which is like flat out for macro photographers. They're like, shut up and take my money, meaning you can have a really shallow depth of field and just keep taking photo. Camera will be like, okay, focus, 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 focus. You'll keep taking the photos and then stack the photograph and give you a final result. That's like, shut up and take my money. So flat out, really amazing features, which again, be mindful, Sony does have that, but they do not give you in like, cheap bodies like A7 Mark IV, because they're like, oh, why would anybody buy something else? It's like, that's not different thing. And it does have better FPS flat out, 120 going up to 180. It does matter, especially for music video producers. They are like, shut up and take my money. And no crop, I will shut up and take my money for that. Again, it's frustrating because your lens changes too much. It's like, okay, I bought a 20 lens, it's gonna behave like 22. That's acceptable. In Sony, it's like, you bought a 20, how nice, it's gonna behave like 35. It's like, what the hell? That's the problem with Sony's crop. And again, they do not have an actual reason to crop, other than, it's like, why would anybody buy Sony A7 S series? I'm like, that's why S series should have had global shutter. Then it's like, bro, it does have some compromise, but it is amazing for video. Better IBIS flat out, there is no discussion. Be mindful, do not use IBIS for ultra wide lenses. There are some inherent limitations. Canon has not figured it out yet, but be mindful. To be fair, nobody else has full frame that is that good with that much IBIS on wide angle, where it's like, this is how Canon should do it. So other small sensors have done it, for example Panasonic and Fuji, but again, small sensors. No overheating. This was the biggest issue for Canon system, where like, they really had amazing features, but flat out people wanted to use it and they're like, yep, 100% useless, because once it overheated, it took time to cool down. It was not like, oh, overheated, stop the file, wait 5 minutes. No, it wait 20 minutes. Then it's like a firmware upgrade. Now the overheating happens later, but once it overheats, it takes even longer to cool down. So a lot of issues. This time it's like, no, that's not an issue. Also has USB webcam, that is awesome, but be mindful, only full HD webcam. But full HD of a full frame camera would be tangibly better than any webcam that you can buy. That's there. And truly next gen autofocus. At this point in time, we have maxed out all other functions, so they're like, our people, animal, vehicle, basically the AI itself will do the filtering for you. It's like, what should be selected, which would be best selection. So performance wise, is genuinely good. So should you buy it or not? Flat out, it's a good video camera. For this kind of price, it's tangibly good. There is no two way around it. It's a good camera. And it does have very good high speed burst capability for stills photographer. Nothing too much have changed in stills, so I'm not talking too much about it. But like, for people who are like, dude, I really need a bit more oomph out of it, shut up and take my money. But 24 megapixels is still an issue. Now you're like, hey, it does not matter to me. Awesome, buy it. If it does matter to you, like, bro, for some reason, like, again, you may be doing some detail work. For example, in Indian photography, especially the brides' clothing and jewelry, they have very fine prints. Like the effort put onto that dress is exponentially higher. It's not just white color with a minor working. It's like, it's exponentially large amount of work that requires high megapixel to show up. So in those sort of scenario, you may be like, hey, my hands are tied, I have to take with 33 megapixel of Sony's offering. Again, if you are one of those, you're gonna buy Sony no matter what, because again, you need a megapixel. If you don't need megapixel, this is a good option. Now, would I recommend this camera? No. Why? I hate Canon. Why I hate Canon? They have recently, again, I have Canon, so it's not like I'm just speaking out of my ass. I'm actually using Canon, so I have noticed Canon's approach over the years becoming worse and worse and worse and worse. Basically, they are trying to become next iPhone. They flat out banned third-party native RF lenses. That's not cool, because you have to understand, there are not that many RF lenses. It's not like whole of EF stack has been converted to RF. That has not happened yet. There are only few RF lenses, and many of them are not amazing quality. For example, 70 to 200 is not that great. Why? Again, it's not the fault of engineering department of the Canon. They are pretty amazing engineer. Is that somebody in product managers decided, it's like, I want a portable lens. It's like, you never release a portable lens as your first lens. Portable will always be garbage compared to a fixed system. Use the fixed one, make an amazing focus system where it's like the best performance, the lightest performance, and then it's like, okay, next generation we're gonna make. Then you'll have a basically customer can have a choice. I want the latest and greatest performance, or I want a good compact system. If you just release the compact function, you do not have the quality as an option. You have to go to DSLR lens. Let that sink in. You have to go back to DSLR lens, EF lens to get comparable quality. Now be mindful, Sony also had garbage 70 to 200. But what did it? Mark II, tangibly better. The first time you can flat out say, Sony's 70 to 200 f2.8 tangibly is better than Canon's RF. Be mindful, EF is genuinely good. RF is not. Why? Because somebody decided it's like, let's make a folding structure. So in this sort of scenario, Sony had a saving grace where they're like, hey, Sigma made some really good lenses for very moderate kind of price, and Tamron made really low cost lenses where there are people like, hey, I'm going to buy into a Sony, I'm going to start with Tamron. If it starts to work out, I'm going to buy into lenses. That's an amazing option. Because be mindful, these camera body, you may think, oh, they're expensive, $2,500. That's chump change compared to the lens prices. Be mindful, be thorough, select lenses beforehand. Do not jump into body first. Select lens. Can you afford the RF lenses? Does the RF mount has the lens that you are looking for? If you have to buy, let's say, adapter lenses, does it have what you are exactly looking for? Be mindful, be thorough on that front. And I flat out cannot support a company that is like, I'm just going to block it. It's like, why? It's just like, okay, you did it. So flat out, I'm not going to support for that reason. Because be mindful, you may think $2,500 is a good thing. You may be better off buying higher end Sony body and third party lenses. And you still may have money left for Sony. That's how expensive RF lenses are. So be mindful of that. Again, if you can afford it, awesome, GG, go on. But if you can't afford it, be mindful. And again, given the fact that you are looking at $2,500 body, you can't afford it. So be mindful of that. And then there is triple hammer. And Canon this time has hidden it so well that it's like, whoa, that's some good stuff. Like you may think, I can do 6K recording. I'm going to buy Ninja 5. Here's the deal. You have to buy mini cables. Why? Micro HDMI. It's like, why? Like my Canon, old, ancient, 5-year-old ancient Canon has mini. Again, full, awesome. Mini, not that good, not that terrible. Micro, what the hell? Micro is tiny compared to USB-C. It breaks while your people are putting it in. That's how fragile that connection is. It's tangibly bad. It just creates e-waste for the world and for the customer who is buying it. And again, the camera body is huge. So don't be like, oh, they don't have space. Like it has space. Canon just decided to F the customer. Cripple Hammer was like, what if we F the customer? And that's why like Canon's sales are going down. It's like this single-handedly will piss off the customer because you're like, one time I'm gonna buy the cable. It's like, oh, cable broke. Second time you're gonna buy it, it broke. Then people are saying, oh, you're gonna buy a cage and you're gonna buy a holder for that HDMI cable. It's like, couldn't they have just put the full size? And be mindful, full size HDMI is cheaper than micro size. Why? Micro size does not sell that many. Like full size, every TV, every monitor, every AV receiver could have 15-16 slots of these. So they are mass produced on a much larger scale compared to that one. So this is cheaper. It is shittier. Why the heck you're giving shittier option? And again, 6K recording, you have to have a cage because trust me when I say this, these things are fragile AF. And then there were even more cruel thing, all eye recording is missing. I noticed it, like I read the whole PDF and I was like, wait a minute, why the heck there is no all eye? My all eye simply means you are recording whole frames, basically. Frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 30, frame 60, like every frame is there. This IPB is like a very advanced system where it's like, it's gonna take 5 frames, some people say, like again, exact mathematics is not clear to me. It's like, it has frames, then it takes the middle frame, converts it into a data frame, where it's like how my previous sensor should be, previous frame was, again how my front was. It saves 1/3 of the space, meaning the file size goes down by 1/3. That's awesome. But here's the deal, it's very bad for editing. Like if you try to do editing, and not to mention quality loss is also there. So video editors who are going to do the timeline performance, they hate this sort of compressed format. It does not matter if it's H.264, it does not matter if it's H.265. It does matter if it's all eye or not all eye. And it does not have all eye. My 800D has all eye. This also has all eye in time lapse. They could have done that. Be mindful, the older variant had that. This one there, remove it. This is Cripple Hammer's work. This is like somebody sat down and is like, oh, we are actually making a good camera. Our high-end camera will not sell. Let's cripple this. Like these two things, because be mindful, so Canon has introduced full-size HDMI on their high-end one. They know that people need full-size HDMI. That's the whole point. Why the heck you are creating e-waste? Why the heck you are making me spend more money for no reason? But Canon is like, what if we F the customer? Wouldn't that be amazing? Let's just F the customer. Wouldn't it be amazing if we just block the lens mount? Wouldn't it be amazing? So it's a good camera, flat out, let me be very clear. It's a very good camera and major aspect is flat out tangibly better than A7 Mark IV. But Cripple Hammer, again, if it matters to you all eye, you will never touch this camera. If you want to do 6K recording, if you have dealt experience with micro HDMI ports, you may be like, you know what, I'm going to live without it. Yes, that's how bad these things. And again, the reason why these things are frustrating, these are intentionally crippling things. It's not like, oh, I want too much. I want 8K, 100, 120 FPS raw file. No, I don't want that. Like what you're giving is good, more than good enough. Just don't create e-waste. Just don't create artificial limitations. Like that's what bothers me. Is like, and again, RF blocking. That's like it's impossible to think about. Like there would be a world where Sony lenses would be better, because I might be mindful, I'm following this industry for 10 years. Back in the day when E-mount was first announced, it was like everybody was like, Sony is going to build the body in the future and people are going to buy Canon lenses. Back in the day, Sony did not have enough lenses, so everybody was using Canon lenses. It has inverted now. So should you buy it or not? Again, if megapixel is the important thing, you're not going to touch this lens. If third-party lenses are important for you, you're not going to touch this. If all eye is important to you, full-size HDMI is important to you, you're not going to touch this. This is a good camera body, but it has been crippled by Canon's like, I'm going to be like Apple, I'm going to F the customer, I'm going to F the environment. It's like, why? So be mindful. Good camera, but again, be mindful. Select the lens first. Select the lens price first before jumping into it, or you will be in for a rude shock awakening for this. So this was my presentation on basically R6 Mark II. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friend. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me your disappointment. Please leave a comment, because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free. And as always, thanks for watching.